Now to a transatlantic diplomatic spat. Donald Trump's US presidential campaign team has filed a legal complaint to America's Federal Election Commission, accusing members of Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party of blatant foreign interference in his knife-edge election battle. The row was fuelled by a now deleted LinkedIn post by a senior Labour official. It called for volunteers to travel to a swing state to support the Democrat contender Kamala Harris, adding that housing will be sorted out. Foreign nationals are allowed to volunteer in US elections as long as they're not paid. The Prime Minister, who's on an overseas trip, is trying to play down the matter, insisting it won't jeopardise his relationship with Mr Trump. The issue came up today in the Commons.
Given today's spirit of cross-party working, will the Deputy Prime Minister join me in applauding the brave Labour staff members who've travelled across the Atlantic to campaign against Donald Trump?
What I say to the honourable gentleman is that people in their own time often go and campaign, and that's what we've seen. It happens in all political parties. People go and campaign and they do what they want to do in their own time with their own money.
On the story, we got the thoughts of the TalkTV presenter Peter Cardwell, who worked as a special advisor to Tory Cabinet ministers, and the Observer columnist Sonia Sodha, a former Labour advisor. Peter, what have you made of this story?
It's a really interesting one. I don't think 100 probably quite well-intentioned people now want anybody to get involved in politics. I think anybody gets involved in politics, that's a good thing. But certainly this has caused something of a transatlantic storm. And if these people all individually had simply done what they were doing, well, there wouldn't have been much of a fuss. And in fact, that's happened for many, many years in lots of different individuals and parts of organisations as well, in both American, British elections and right around the world. The problem is that this looks as if, even though it isn't, it looks as if it's Labour sanctioned, and that the Labour Party is taking a particular position on this and sympathising with Kamala Harris. Now, there's news as well that there is a Labour women's event, which will be on election night in support of Kamala Harris. These things are not a good idea, especially when the government is meant to stay neutral in all of this. Individual people have individual thoughts on all of this, and I totally understand that. But certainly when at least the impression is given or even inferred, as it has been from the Trump campaign anyway, well, that is a very difficult thing, especially as he might be the next president of the United States.
Sonia, has the Labour Party breached any rules? What have you made of it all?
No, I don't think they have. So this has always happened, which is that Labour Party activists, the Labour Party is sister parties with other progressive social democratic parties abroad. The same is true for the Conservatives. They have relationships with other international conservative parties as well. It's always happened that young activists like to go across, help campaign as volunteers. That's nothing new. I know lots of Labour activists who went to campaign for Obama in 2008. I know that Conservative activists have gone out and campaigned for the Republicans. This is not the government taking a view in the election. We need to understand that there's a difference between Labour Party activists. Perhaps this Labour Party member of staff shouldn't have put something on LinkedIn about it. I understand that the
Sonia, she did specifically mention this offer of housing, so does that not make it a bit tricky?
Yeah, but what normally happens is that when you're volunteering in a political campaign abroad or even in your own country, volunteers put you up. So essentially, you'll be staying with American campaign volunteers locally. Again, that's just normal business in an election campaign. This certainly wasn't a financial offer of housing. The Labour Party's going to pay for your housing to go and do this. So I think what's happened is quite an innocuous LinkedIn post has been overinterpreted. The Trump campaign is looking to make mischief very clearly. This is something that's happened since the year dot. And, I think we need to be careful about falling into Donald Trump's trap and, giving him the publicity he wants about this in many ways.
Peter, what do you think about that? Are we falling into Trump's trap? And, was this innocuous comment on LinkedIn?
I don't think it was just entirely innocuous. I think it was unwise. I don't think there's anything sinister about what this senior Labour Party official did. Sonia is absolutely right to say this has happened from time immemorial. And I haven't campaigned in American elections, but I've certainly stayed in the homes of many Americans who took me on an internship program, for example. And during election campaigns, when I was a special advisor, I stayed in volunteers' homes here in the UK, for example. So that's something that has happened, and Sonia's absolutely right. Donald Trump, I mean, I think the thing is with Donald Trump's campaign and American politics in general, people don't react, they overreact to everything. And references to 1776 and the English are coming and all the rest of it, I think was perhaps a tiny bit tongue-in-cheek. I think there is probably more to worry about in regard to comments by various Labour figures, including David Lammy, for example, who called the Foreign Secretary, who called Donald Trump a neo-Nazi sympathising a sociopath. I mean, that is much more difficult than I think 100 people who, let's face it, even if they go to the tightest of tight swing states, are not going to change the result as a result of, 100 sets of boots on the ground.
I mean, Sonia, I suppose the heart of this whole story is what will be the repercussions if Trump wins? What will be the effect on his relationship with Sir Keir Starmer?
Look, I think this is mischief making. I don't think that Donald Trump, if he becomes elected president, I don't think in his first meeting with Keir Starmer as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, he's going to raise what, a few 25-year-old volunteer activists were doing in Michigan or Pennsylvania. Much more important to that relationship, would be the fact that Keir Starmer has met Donald Trump, for example. The fact that these would be two heads of state. I agree with Peter that there have been, Labour now cabinet ministers who, as shadow ministers, said some unwise things, given that they might be in government in sort of, 3 or 4 years' time. But Trump is not going to Trump is making election mischief in the United States. He's unpredictable, but not even he is going to let this frame his relationship with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom should he win the US presidency, I think.
Peter, do you think it would have any effect?
I think there might be a sort of throwaway comment or something like that. Donald Trump never forgets a slight, perceived or actual, and I think this is something that might come up at some stage. But essentially, the special relationship remains as it is. Donald Trump, it's within his interest if he becomes president, as looks may well be likely. It seems to be about 50-50 in terms of some of the polling, and he may well win the Electoral College, but we'll see. It's within his interest to have a very good relationship with the United Kingdom. He certainly thought he had anyway. He talked about how the Queen thought he was wonderful and all the rest of it. I'm not sure she would necessarily have agreed with that, but certainly it is, and it's an important relationship. I don't think it's suffered a sort of devastating blow as a result of this, and I think we'll probably look back on this and see this senior Labour official being absolutely mortified by our post, a little bit of furore around this, but nonetheless, I think relationships remaining intact.
OK, and we will find out in 2 weeks' time, of course. Sonia and Peter, thank you both very much indeed for joining us this evening.